Hey, leaders. In this episode of Leading Collaborative Response, Kurtis and I are joined by two exceptional leaders, Keri Card-Esau and Kim Wedman. We're excited to dive into the incredible work they are doing within Wild Rose School Division and the ways in which they have fostered collaboration and inclusivity across their schools. So let's get started. Are you a leader who is navigating the nuances of leading collaborative response in your school or district? Are you unsure of what collaborative response is? Are you looking to understand the critical role leadership plays when establishing and refining a collaborative response approach?
Collaborative response began as a grassroots approach to focus on the needs of students through a framework of collaboration. That approach has grown to a movement that is training leadership and education.
Through the Leading Collaborative Response podcast, Kurtis and I share our own experiences of leading collaborative response and lessons learned as we continue to learn and gain insight through the experiences of working alongside others. We also have the opportunity to engage in conversations with school and divisional leaders implementing the framework in their own organizations.
We know great leaders build great teams because that is what every child deserves. Subscribe to the Leading Collaborative Response podcast and join the thousands of schools seeing success for students through intentional and focused collaborative efforts. Welcome to another episode of Leading Collaborative Response. As always, I'm Kurtis Hewson, co-founder and lead learner of Jigsaw Learning.
And I'm Lorna Hewson. Today, we're joined by Keri Card-Esau, the principal of H.W. Pickup Middle School in Drayton Valley. Keri has had a diverse and impactful career in education, beginning as a teacher at Paul First Nation School, where she also served as an inclusive education coordinator and principal. She spent nearly a decade learning from and with the Paul First Nation community before transitioning to Wild Rose School Division as a vice principal. Now in her 9th year as a school leader, Keri holds a master's degree in educational research with a focus on interdisciplinary studies.
We're also thrilled to have Kim Wedman with us today. Kim is the Learning Services Coordinator with Wild Rose School Division, bringing over 25 years of experience in education. She is an instructional specialist with expertise in literacy, numeracy, EAL learners, inclusive education, and curriculum design. With a master's in leadership and design thinking, Kim is deeply passionate about building collaborative learning environments and fostering strong community connections. Kim is also a friend that I've known for over 30 years. So as we dive into today's conversation and explore how Keri and Kim are working together to create impactful collaborative learning experiences. So I'm assuming anyone watching this, when they hear 30 years, in fact, it's over 30 years that we've known each other, Kim, they must assume that we must have met as toddlers.
Right? Of course. I'm not any older than that, are you?
Yeah, of course.
Sure, you guys.
So we gave the formal bios. We'd love to go to Keri first. Can you share just a little bit of your journey as an educator, and then we'll turn it over to Kim with the same question.
Absolutely. I think you captured everything there. I started off teaching on Paul First Nation. I started teaching grade 2, moved to grade 3, and then did some dabbling in through junior high as well. And then I moved into the role of the inclusive ed teacher, and was a great season of learning for me and carrying forward that learning into the leadership component, which now is just adds to kind of my toolbox when I'm making decisions every day. Yeah.
Awesome. And Kim, same question. Just share a little bit of your journey to come to us here today.
Well, since I started as a toddler, I was I was very fortunate to start my teaching career in Lloydminster, and we taught up there for 10 years, in which I was involved in
of course, being a teacher, but also on the inclusive learning side. I was also heavily involved in AC, which really developed my toolbox. And I feel very fortunate that I was a part of many different projects along the way with AC. And then we continued on down to Wild Rose School Division, where I continued with inclusive services and my leadership roles. In all schools, I always say I must have been getting promoted all the time. I started in elementary, then I went on to middle school, and then I wasn't done with that. So I went to high school, worked on some alternative learning pieces for high school students as well, and then rounded out being on the inclusive learning side, but then also back to the learning services side.
So just a little bit of everything.
Kind of a little bit of everything. True story.
Well, Keri, why don't we go then first to giving us a little bit of an idea of HW Pickup. Grades, number of students, just give us a little bit of background for the school, and then we'll get a little bit of background for the school division before we launch into, so what does collaborative response look like in your organization?
Absolutely. HW Pickup has approximately 470 students. We are from grade 5 to 8, and we have an exceptional staff. These people in this building are truly stars of knowing what is best for kids and how to harness that. We are just right in the middle of town, so we serve a bunch of rural kids as well as town kids. Just a pretty well-rounded group of humans here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Keri. And Kim, just to give our listeners and viewers an idea of the dynamics and diversity of Wild Rose School Division.
Sure. So we are just over 4,000 students in our division, but geographically we span about 3.5 hours, all the way from Caroline up to Drayton Valley and across to Breton. So it's quite a large area of rural schools. And of course, every community brings its own context. So, there are community contexts that we definitely deal with within that, and different school configurations. We have some K-12 schools, we have some K-6, 7 to 12, and then also some middle schools such as HW Pickup.
Excellent. So before we jump into what does collaborative response look like at HW Pickup, Kim, can we give you the opportunity to share a little bit of the school division's history around collaborative response, and then we'll look at it through the lens of HW Pickup.
Sure. Again, I was fortunate enough to be around when we first started our journey in collaborative response, and we were definitely some of the early adopters, I think, along the way. But truly, and I know Keri has the same passion as me, we're kind of fangirls, and we do love the framework because we feel that it gets the best for kids. And of course, that's why we're all here. That's why we work in what we do. So we did start off our journey early with the framework and being able to work through the process of gathering some data and being able to look at the evidence. And of course, we were, very focused, kid-center focused at that point in time. And then now with some of the shifting thinking around collaborative response framework, we've been able to shift more into the key issues. We're kind of doing a refresh in our schools, I think. Some schools definitely were further along their journey than others, but it's definitely been a great refresh for all of our schools. And, with some of our leadership changes within our schools, they've been able to bring a new refresh to each school that they've come to with some of their experiences as well.
Yeah, that's so much like many different school divisions who have started early on and then, continued along their way and have come to a place of, whether it was around COVID or whether it was around just changes in staffing, but coming to that place of, okay, we need to do a renew and refresh what people's understanding is around that and being able to move forward from there.
Well, I think this is part of the power of the collaborative response work, is that there's no end finish line, and the framework is evolving and changing. What we know of collaborative response today, I assume, is going to be enhanced and built upon in 2, 3, 4 years from now. It's just that continued learning evolution.
And Lorna, as you brought up COVID, I think about how we had to restructure and change things during that period of time in education. And honestly, being a leader in the online school world of that part, and I know you guys were a huge help to me in that, but I could not have imagined not having that kind of a structure to be able to work with people across our division, because it wasn't just one school, it was 17 schools that our team was working with at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we found during that time too that people who really leaned into their collaborative structures came out of it in a very different way, because there was a component of wellness for staff in ensuring that they had teams to collaborate with. And when we all came out of COVID, then people who had that chance to be able to be with teams and kept that consistent were like way better off, which is great. So Keri, let's jump right into understanding what collaborative response looks like at HW Pickup.
So can you start off with just describing how have you layered teams within the building? And I know people that are watching and listening, they love hearing the nitty-gritty nuances of who are on teams, what do they look like, when do they meet, how do they meet?
So for HW, right now, this is our inaugural year of embedded time for collaborative response. So Kim and I have been very fortunate that we have worked together for a few years. So we have had some of those sessions in the past where you are planning and you're in the excitement and then you're like, okay, I think we've got something really special here. And at our previous school, so I just want to walk back a little bit.
Please.
So before I was the vice principal at Aurora Elementary here in Drayton Valley as well. And that school had done some exceptional work with you earlier before I had joined Wild Rose. And I remember coming into a grade 3 room, the first collaborative response meeting that I attended, and I came out and I almost wanted to cry. And I wanted to cry because I was so excited by walking into a room and seeing teachers invested not in their own kids, but in all of the kids. And I walked into that room and they had data on the TV, and the data was color coded and movable, and they knew the grade 3s, not just their class. And they had fulsome conversations about what was needed to move each student forward, and they had a plan. And I left that classroom and I went back and I'm like, oh, this is the best thing. And then Kim and I started working on how do we get this exceptional team to spread. So we wanted to take that incredible work that we were seeing in one team, and we wanted to be able to encourage every team in the school to take the risks of coming out of their rooms and all the kids, focusing on all the kids. When I moved over to HW Pickup, Kim and I had a vision a little bit before I got here on what we could achieve at HW Pickup. And it started with getting the teachers harnessed with their expertise. And we started doing that by embedding time. So before we got here, we looked at the schedule and we were like, okay, how are we going to make this work when we have multiple classes of multiple grades? How are we going to get everybody to have that embedded time? So it started with conversations with some of our key people who could make that happen. And the key people in our building were our learning commons facilitators and our physical education staff, and saying the value of what we can do if we can get these people together is going to be so impactful, but I need you to walk with me and I need you to take a risk. And they did. And we were able to embed actually weekly time for our teachers to get together. And we're just off and running.
Let's jump into the weeds then of how. How do you free up? Typically, when you say teachers are meeting,
Yeah.
Who and how many people, and how do you get them free from the instructor?
Each grade meets together for 1 hour a week. So each grade 5 team, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8 have embedded time in their schedule where they are together without their students. Students are with other teachers, and at the beginning of the school year, we actually used a lot of your videos to even explain to teachers what this was going to look like and why we were doing it. And then we had practice sessions in August before the kids even came in. Like, is this, some of these things might feel a little weird as we're getting, some of the roles in some of those meetings. What are key issues? And kind of starting to get our school to speak the language of collaborative response and to get them to see what they could do together if they just had the time. And it is just such a pleasure to come to collaborative response and see teachers talking about the data that they've collected and what that data means, to talk about key issues, start talking about interventions that are universal for everyone, and just to see how much traction has been gained in only a few months here. It's exceptional.
And I'm going to jump in here because Keri is like too humble and too kind. She has a wonderful leadership team, but she definitely had an amazing vision moving forward with this. And when she went back to the August piece where we practiced, I don't know how many people knew we were practicing, but the modeling that Keri showed through that, the modeling of norms within staff meetings, all of those things set up that structure for those teachers to be able to move ahead and do that. The other thing I think is the commitment that the leadership team at HW Pickup has towards this time and how important and how valuable it is. I think there's always a few skeptics on your staff that are like, yeah, we'll see how long this lasts for, where, it's been so powerful and impactful for kids at that school that I think, I can't think of one person who's not invested in it now because they've seen the action.
And I think that we had some fun with it too. We are having some fun. So when it was coming to even embedding what our norms were going to be, there was a little bit of fun that was had with that. And now we have our norms actually embedded into our monthly staff meetings as well. And sometimes norm shows up from cheers. You don't know what might happen there. There's a little bit of humor with that. And when we made our cards for the roles, they were actually so funny that I had to send them to Kim, because the teachers, you're doing the good work, but you can always have fun with it as well. It's one of the things that I actually really love about collaborative response is that you get to make it your own. It's not, everybody's going to do it a little bit differently to make it impactful and meaningful in your own building. And so we had found with some of those connection and relationship building pieces and adding a little bit of humor in there, our teachers are off and running.
So Keri, and that's fantastic. We often say that, we don't have to be automatons when we're engaging in this work. No, have fun when we're engaging and collaborating with our colleagues. So I'm assuming then that embedded time is afforded you the opportunity for teams to engage in some collaborative planning. You mentioned reviewing data and setting goals, but then we also infuse collaborative team meetings during that time as well. About how often are your collaborative team meetings happening?
So what we actually did was we took the collaborative response and we made a 6-week round.
Okay.
And what that round looks like is in week 1, it is a learning round for teachers. So before the school year kicked off, we had surveyed the teachers and we asked them what they needed. So our teachers said that they needed support in literacy, numeracy, and trauma care. So we looked at, okay, now how do we give that to our teachers? Because some days some PD days are pretty jam-packed, and they're not often enough to give you a deep dive. So we created 6-week rounds, with round 1 being a professional development round, where in many cases Kim would come in and she would do an in-service. And now we're moving to having some of our own teachers who have expertise in certain areas. Like, we just opened round 3 and it was assessment. And she is a fantastic guru of assessment. So she brought in her own knowledge, shared it with the staff. And then in week 2, they have an opportunity to get messy. So week 2, now they are looking at kind of scaffolding that learning for themselves into their teams. Week 3 is typically where we have our key issues. So at that point, we invite our family wellness worker, and we will invite our inclusive ed teacher to come in as well. And that's when we talk about the kiddos that we're going to be keeping our eye on. During that time, we kind of, I know it seems a little bit disjointed, but there's some data collection that's happening behind the scenes. So you've done week 1, week 2, week 3, we're meeting together to talk about our kids that need to be looking at those issues. Then week 4, 5, and 6, you're getting the data. Teams are looking at what that data is, and then they're starting to disseminate what they need to do with it. So does that mean we're changing our flex groups? Maybe that does. Does that mean that actually we've just noticed in the RCAT that we've had one area that we need a little bit more focus on? So those weeks are then used for the data, also for planning assessment, and then changing groups. So that's kind of the skeleton of what we've done.
Oh, I love it. And I really, really love the intentional structure that you put into that of, I assume different teams are going to have slightly different areas of focus that they're looking at, but there's still a defined structure around that for them to work within.
Yeah. And then in our case, an administrator is at every meeting, so that we know what our teams need in real time. So they are the powerhouse. We're there to give them the supports because they know what they need. Sometimes you have conversations about, okay, well, if we want to actually do a pre-assessment to gather this piece of data, what can we do? What can we get? Then we can quickly get what we need and bring it back to the teams. And then it keeps the power on, the foot on the gas, so to speak.
Yeah. And so anyone that's listening to this that has background around collaborative response in these 4 layers of team, you've beautifully described those first 2 layers, that collaborative planning, collaborative team meeting. Is there a school support team layer then that's also built in? What does that look like, Keri?
So I'm actually just going to show you, this is my weekly schedule. And on my weekly schedule there, if you'll see, there are little pictures. And it's so embedded in a visual for the school is when these meetings are going to take place. So we run on day 1 through 5 here. So for us, our school support team meeting is always going to be on a day 2 at 9 a.m. And everybody knows when that is. And we are ready to roll on those days. And actually something interesting came from that, from the collaborative response that's unique to HW Pickup, because we are actually embedded on a campus. We're in Powerhouse campus. We share space with another school. We had found when we moved in, there was room for relationship. And there was also some different things that sometimes when you're 2 schools in one, you need to be having embedded time. So we thought, well, why do we not just make a collaborative response team meeting for the school? So we have our powerhouse meeting. We have an agenda that we follow for that meeting, and it helps us deal with anything that's coming up, not necessarily data driven for student success, but it actually helps with lots of relationship things and just the different parts of having 2 schools work together as one.
So, Kim, thank you so much for that, Keri. Kim, from your perspective, I mean, you're obviously involved and engaged in the work at HW Pickup, but you see it in other schools. From your perspective, what are some of the things that stand out as highly impactful that you can speak to in relation to HW pickup that you see from someone who's not in the building each and every day?
Well, I definitely think, Kurtis, you kind of talked about this a little bit, but that structure is key. And some other schools have adopted similar, but maybe a little bit different depending on their context, that structure. But definitely schools that have that kind of a structure embedded into their schedule, I think the consistency and the routine of it really help teachers to be able to just get their head wrapped around it. But not only that, I think it also reduces some of their workload. Mm-hmm. So I think they're starting to see the benefits of what this means for them, and they know what's coming up next. So they're able to, know that there's things happening. I also think from HW pickup, but having their team meeting, so kind of their lead team meeting, also takes some things off of teachers' plates as well. And I think once people see impact happening, and it might be behind the scenes impact because there are things that have to happen or work through, I think it gets away from maybe how teachers felt stuck sometimes in the older version of the framework to the newer version where they can actually get some proactive solutions that they can do universally in their classroom or in their team, and create some of that language as well. So that's what I see at other schools that they're working towards as well. But definitely I've seen the impact, at HW pickup this year has been tremendous. So
yeah, that's amazing. And when you think about, that's what we're about, right? Is being able to have that impact first of all on our students, but secondary to that is having impact on our staff and helping them to do that learning too. Mm-hmm. So Keri, I just want to ask you, has collaborative response changed how you lead and learn with your team?
Oh, yes. Back when we were still talking about professional learning communities, I was emerging as a school leader then. And I remember coming out of the classroom and going into leadership and being like, oh no, what am I going to do? How am I supposed to know everything? I can't know everything. And then I just remember having that bit of an epiphany where I actually don't have to know everything, because every school, no matter what school I have been a part of, is jam-packed with the actual experts. Yeah. My job is not actually to be the expert. My job is to facilitate expertise, to bring them together and give them the tools that they need. And then sometimes I have to say, I just sit back and I am just so grateful for what I'm learning from them. It's messy. When you're coming in to do this, like, I would want every school that is about to embark on this to go, it is okay to be in the mess. You are going to be fine. Get through the mess. What are the names of what we're doing every week? You'll figure it out. What are your norms? You're going to get there. Because what you learn in going through the mess is what then will become unique to your school on the other side when you are finally developing common language and you are walking together as one, and you just see what the teachers are able to do when you give them the time they need.
So you've obviously talked about the layers of collaborative structures and processes that you have in place and how the data and evidence is informing those conversations. But we have that third foundational component of the continuum of supports. Can you share where that's at within the school and what your vision is moving forward around your continuum of supports? We'll be right back to continue this episode. Are you looking to maximize the collaborative capacity of your school or district? Are you wanting to take your professional learning communities or response to intervention work to the next level? Have you started the work in collaborative response but are looking to reignite or deepen your plans? We would love to have you join us at the 2025 Collaborative Response Retreat happening May 2nd and 3rd in beautiful Lacombe, Alberta.
Over the 2 days, we have an intentionally designed program of breakout sessions and sharing, along with supported team planning time to ensure that you walk away with a plan for introducing or strengthening collaborative response in your organization for the upcoming year. With a concentrated focus on team planning, networking, and individualized support for your school, the Collaborative Response Retreat is an outstanding opportunity to grow your team's understanding and implementation of this powerful support framework. We are also planning some fun time so you can relax and enjoy activities as a team in our historic community of Lacombe in central Alberta.
In addition, participants will gain access to an extensive repository of online resources to deepen their understanding and support ongoing implementation. Plan to join a growing network of educators dedicated to responding to the diverse needs of their learners. We've capped our attendance at 140 participants, so make sure to register early to secure your team spot. We're looking forward to seeing you in Lacombe in May. And now back to our conversation.
We actually have right now a 3-year plan with our collaborative response. And just that we're at the beginning of our journey at HW Pickup. So we've only been doing this together for a few months. The teachers know what's coming. They know that's where we're going. And we're at the point right now where we're starting to go, okay, what is this going to look like as we plan together what universal strategies we're going to have as HW, not in the grade 5 team, not in the grade 7 team or the grade 8 team, but universally. Yeah. And that's also leading us into planning what our common language is, and then eventually getting to the point where we are aiming for horizontal and vertical common language, and then some work in what each grade team is planning for assessment and what that means as a group.
Well, and I really like that, the idea of thoughtful implementation, that let's get one piece started and solidified, and then we'll add on. And we talk about this over and over with schools of just start small. Yeah. In time, you're going to reach that 3-year spot where it's insanely complex how everything connects, but don't start there. Just start with one piece and get it refined, and then add on the next component.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that anybody who is joining our staff, the kids, everybody knows this collaborative response isn't something that we have as a part of our checklist. It's what we do. It's a foundational piece of what the culture is in our building. Yeah. And that's where we're at right now. We're culture building and making sure everybody understands the power, and then we'll get to the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Keri and I have, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I was going to say, we've had numerous conversations about that piece and, how it is such an important foundation in culture versus just a checklist or something you do every week. That's not what it is, because it goes well beyond the walls of that meeting time if it's part of your culture. And I think that's a huge piece within that. As far as the continuum of supports, I think that's an area that most of our schools have had to revisit if they had one before, or if they had some ideas around one. One of my visions for that, I think, is really to get within that expertise within those buildings and facilitating conversations around that, is to really get it to be a living and breathing document. Because it's not meant to be a laminated piece that we go back to and we kind of look down and do. It's really about, throughout that meeting process, that we're developing those solutions along the way, and we're adding to our continuum each and every time, which in turn adds to all of our toolboxes, which I think is really, really important, because we're always learning. That's what education is about.
Yeah.
I was with a team just recently, and part of their process was at the end of their collaborative team meeting, they actually took just a couple of minutes to review the continuum, reflect on the meeting that they just had, and determine if there were any changes going forward. And just understanding that it was there present throughout the meeting, so those ideas are there to be able to use during the meeting, but then at the end to say, okay, are there changes that we need to make at this point in time for our continuum of supports? And Keri, I just want to say I love the fact that you are not jumping in
Yeah.
to that work right away, because when we a lot of times we see schools grabbing onto that continuum of supports activity and engaging in it early on, and then it becomes just that activity that we did that one day that, we with sticky notes.
And you don't really see
And
the
it
connection.
and it doesn't connect. When you are leaving it and pausing on that part to really establish your especially your processes and structures, and then really thinking about how will that continuum of supports influence and impact what we're doing in our team meetings. And that's such an integral part going forward.
I think it's easy, and I can speak from experience with this, and I said this to Kim a couple of years ago. It's so exciting that you can get a vision that is beyond what actually can be embedded easily. And the work that we're doing is complex in it, and because it's complex, it deserves time to become naturalized, and the language we're speaking needs to be naturalized. And I remember saying to Kim a few years ago, because we'd come out of a planning meeting and my head felt like it was like one of those, I think I said like Dora the Explorer, when like the bobblehead where you're going to clunk on the, because your head is so full of things. But there's no way that your staff are going to be able to do that with you that fast, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be purposeful that the time that you're giving is impactful before you start adding more of the complexity. So we'll start with tier one interventions when we get there, and then we'll get messy with that. We'll get messy with common language around assessment. We'll get messy with all of those things, but it'll be in time.
Absolutely. So, Kim, I want to go to you for a little bit of this conversation, because obviously you're there to help support implementation within schools, and really seeing this, as Keri's alluded to, infusing a culture of collaborative response, not just pieces of collaborative response. But I know at the divisional level, you're also trying to make this part of the divisional culture, that it's not just one school at a time, but divisionally. Can you share some of the things that Wild Rose is doing so that it's layered on at the divisional level? It's not just something our schools do, but we at the system level are also implementing collaborative response elbow to elbow with you. We'll be right back to continue this episode.
Feeling overwhelmed with the expectations being placed on teachers, leaders, and educational systems to respond to the diverse needs of our learners?
Are you wanting to take your PLCs and RTI efforts to the next level?
It definitely takes a highly coordinated framework of structures and processes to maximize the collective capacity of your team to ensure success for all students. Collaborative Response is that framework.
Order your copy of our bestseller, Collaborative Response, 3 foundational components that transform how we respond to the needs of learners, which includes access to a comprehensive companion website. Join the thousands of schools using the framework to ensure high levels of success for students and staff. And now back to our conversation.
Absolutely. And I think that that's been a huge learning this year for our divisional team. It's been a very, very powerful, impactful change. I will say it's a work in progress for sure. and to see, because it is a little bit different to manage the pieces at a divisional level, it looks a little bit different than the school level. So how does that work? And we've tried some things that haven't worked at all, and then we try some other things, and they're okay. But I think really it does come back to some of those structures and processes at the beginning. And I would say we're growing in that area, and that's an area that we want to continue to grow in. But it is really impactful when you go to a school and say, we're doing the same thing. Like, we're building an agenda and it looks like this, and we have, action items. We have norms too. And from our administrative team, we have, norms at our administrator meeting, and, again, just getting in the messiness of it. And what does it look like from a admin team? What does it look like from a divisional team? And ultimately, both Kurtis and Lorna, you guys have talked about this. It's about support. It's about how best support schools.
Mm-hmm. Well, and utilizing some parallel structures and processes for how you can support schools in similar ways for how schools are supporting their students.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, we always love to ask a little bit of a sentence stem, and you can arm wrestle for who gets to respond first. But as a result of collaborative response, we have seen.
How would you finish that?
Keri.
A growth in relationship. Our staff coming together, and instead of having 5 grade 5 team classes, we have 1 grade 5 team, and we are seeing it across the board in every grade. And to the point where teachers are coming and saying, we don't just want to meet in our grade team, we want to start meeting vertically. And they are moving faster than what I thought that they would when I started. And it is coming down to relationship and trust building.
Kim, as a result of collaborative response, we have seen?
I think shifts in culture and relationship. I know both Keri and I are we're big relationship girls, and it's such a powerful way to move forward in relationship. And I just feel that once trust is built and people know that they're not by themselves, I think that's huge in the world that we're living in today and the complexities of what is out there, that they have a team. Just like kids have a team, I think it's just such a valuable way to support kids.
I think that's fascinating too. We just got off a conversation earlier for our Building a Culture of Collaboration podcast, where the guest had spoken to the correlation between people who feel isolated and how that leads to well-being concerns, burnout. But when you can be part of a team, yeah, there's days where you're overwhelmed. Of course, this is a complex profession, but you never feel alone, which I think is really important. So we do have one more question that we'd love to finish off with, and it goes like this. In the spirit of, if you knew then what you know now, what advice would you give your past self in relation to the collaborative response work?
Go slow to go fast. That is it for me. Go slow to go fast. Make sure you get your relationship pieces and your trust building, and then lean into the process and accept the mess, because it's going to get messy. Sometimes you think you've made it so far, and then somebody's like, actually, that's too scary. I can't do that. And then go slow to go fast.
Awesome.
And I would say that growth mindset matters. It's really important to know that we're all learning and we don't have all the answers, and there's power in the room to find creative solutions for the complexities that we're dealing with. And sometimes it can be as simple. I know I was at a school the other day, and it was a very seasoned teacher who was she was stuck and she wasn't sure what to do. And someone had suggested a small little strategy around a timer and actually giving it to the kid rather than her having the timer. And it was just, again, it's so simple, but she came back and that's exactly what she said to her team was, thank you. I do not know why I have not done that yet. But, and I think watching that happen on a team, again, just builds that relationship even more.
Well, and it reinforces every one of us. I don't care if you're a second-year teacher or a 30-year vet, your toolbox is so vast that how could you possibly remember in every situation all of the myriad of strategies that you could be trying? Sometimes it takes a colleague saying, hey, maybe this is something you could try, and you go, of course, that's a great idea. Why hadn't I thought of that? Well, it's because it's complex work when we're trying to make the impact that we want to make for students. So, as we reach the conclusion of our conversation, love a chance for either one to share any last comments or thoughts around the collaborative response work before we thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about something that I'm so excited about. I remember when we were at our division office meeting and they said, do you guys think that we should go ahead and jump back into collaborative response? I think I jumped up in the meeting and then I said something about maybe asking for autographs. Like I was so excited about this. So for me to be here to have this conversation with you, I'm just grateful for it. And hoping that when schools are starting in on this, that they have the same opportunities for learning that we did. So thank you.
Well, right back at you, Keri, because we are so grateful for your passion and excitement around this work, and amazing that you are embracing it and making it happen in your school.
Thanks.
And I'd just like to say thank you as well. From a personal pedagogy and practice sense, it was transformational in my teaching and in my leadership in being able to support schools. So I can't imagine my work without it. It's definitely the way forward, I think, for our kids. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we can let anyone who is viewing or listening to this, if you'd like to learn more, please come out to our collaborative response retreat. That's in Lacombe in May, because Keri and Kim will be there and will go much more in depth, be able to answer questions and continue to share the HW pickup journey. I will be excited to see where it's at the 4 or 5 months from now.
May. Yeah.
Me too.
That's exciting.
All right. So with that, thank you so much. If it's all right with you, we'd love to put your email addresses into the show notes, that if there are people that have questions, that they can reach out.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Keri and Kim. We've very much enjoyed this conversation, and we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Thanks. We'll see you soon.
Wow. It's always fantastic to be able to connect with leaders that have passion around the collaborative response work and see it as more than a framework that we're going to implement, and more as a way we're going to think. It's how it's our culture. It becomes infused into how we exist within our building. So,
well, I think the understanding with Keri and with Kim's guidance in this is that even before they started implementation, they were very thoughtful about how that was going to look and how they were going to move forward with that, because it really reflects, and that that thoughtfulness in implementation really reflects the idea that this is more than let's just get together, create some time, and we'll have this meeting.
Well, and I also loved how Keri noted the go slow to go fast, but the idea of we're going to be very intentional or purposeful of when we take the next step, and we're not going to do it in a way that's going to overwhelm our team just because I know how I want it to be in place within the school.
Yeah. So a word that was said over and over and over by both of them was messy. And I love that they articulate that they are so excited and energetic about, and just really happy about how that is moving forward in the school, but they don't hesitate for a minute to be able to say, this is messy and it's hard.
Yeah.
And the messiness will get there, but through the messiness is where we do our learning.
Yeah. And the one thing that Keri said that was a great reminder and affirmation for me is my leadership from a personal level changed the day I understood that I don't have to know everything.
Yeah.
I just need to facilitate the people who do have incredible expertise, that it's all right to say, I don't know how best to respond, but as a leader, I'm going to help create the structures and processes so that the people with the greatest degree of expertise have opportunities to dig into that together. I know that's such a key transition to move away from that. We've discussed it before, the Superman syndrome of having to be everything for everyone. And no, that's not how we most effectively lead. It's by...
Well, it's actually fallible thinking.
It is, yeah.
If you think that you know everything about everything, or think that you should know, then that's already a problem.
Well, and then in that case, why do we need collaboration? We just need time for somebody to go and fix everything. It's not the way that we can exist and really leverage expertise within our buildings.
So another thing that Keri talked about, and Kim as well, talked about how they did practice sessions at the very beginning of the year, and just being, just trying things on and trying things out. And she even said it felt a little bit weird.
Yeah, we hear this all the time. It feels a little mechanical, a little awkward, but it's going to have incredible impact long term.
Yeah, and knowing that you need to stay true to the processes and structures, even when it feels a little bit weird, because it is leading you. We know that those structures and processes actually help to make the shift in culture that they talked a lot about.
100%. So as always, it's so exciting to hear from schools and school and divisional leaders that are really living that ethos of every child deserving a team, and that we are going to be able to respond. And she mentioned it, of they're not your kids and our kids or my kids, they're ours. And how do we work as a team? That's really critically important in this. So we will make sure that contact information for Keri and Kim are included in the show notes. As always, if you have questions, please reach out, and we'll ensure that there's some other resources available for you through the show notes as well. And super excited now to hear their story come retreat.
Yeah. So
May.
Really consider coming to retreat, because we have we've got Keri and Kim there, but we've got so many other leaders that are going to be sharing their story as well.
Yeah, and the idea with our collaborative response retreat is every single participant that comes and attends has value to contribute, and how do we leverage and network that incredible room of expertise that we're going to be able to bring together.
We are all experts and learners in that space.
And that's a great place to end. We wish you all the best, and please like, subscribe, share the episode with other colleagues that would take value in it. Until the next time, thank you so much and all the best.
See you soon.
For more on collaborative response, visit jigsawlearning.ca or join the JL Insider to receive access to newly added resources and content. Make sure to follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast and the Jigsaw Learning YouTube channel to access past and upcoming episodes. Join us again to continue to build your own capacity in leading collaborative response in your context.